Fitzpatrick, the Assistant Dean for the Career and Professional Development Center at Albany Law School. Before we get started, I'd like to mention that today's program will be recorded so we can share the recording with any of our students and alumni who are not able to join us today. If you have questions, please feel free to use the chat function, and during our panel, please feel free to unmute and ask your questions directly. If you'd like to ask questions but remain anonymous, please feel free to send me a message in the chat and I'll read the question. In addition to the Career and Professional Development Center, today's program is also sponsored by the Franklin H. Williams Judicial Commission, the Capital District Black and Hispanic Bar Association, and Albany Law's APALSA, BALSA, and LALSA student affinity groups. Thank you to everyone who has made this program possible. Today's agenda includes a welcome from the Honorable Ricja Rice, remarks from the Honorable Troy K. Weber, as well as a short presentation on the career resources available to our students and alumni. After these presentations, we will have a panel discussion that will be moderated by the Honorable Richard Rivera, who will be joined by our alumni and panelists, Brenda Baddam, Kyle Ishman, Shalini Natesan, and Kadeem Wollaston, and also our Assistant Dean for Diversity and Inclusion at Albany Law School, Jermaine Cruz. At this time, I would like to take a minute to introduce the Honorable Ricja Rice. Judge Rice is an Albany City Court judge and first vice president of the Capital District Black and Hispanic Bar Association. She is also an Albany Law alumna, class of 2005. Judge Rice, do we have you on the call? There you are. Oh, you're muted.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? I'd like to thank you for having me and welcome all the participants today to talk about pathways to the legal profession and navigating and excelling at a law firm or in the legal profession in general. I've been tasked with explaining or discussing with you the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion and access to the court system. I was recently elected to Albany City Court. I was first appointed in August of last year and then elected for this year of 2022. In the court system, the importance of diversity is, it's paramount. The individuals that use the court system, both on the plaintiff and on the defendant side, come from all walks of life. We see in the court system rich, poor, all different races, individuals that speak all different languages. It's really important that the bar, the bench and the bar actually reflect the individuals that come before our court system in different ways. The law firms that come, the attorneys that practice in our courts, it's important for them to understand the clients, understand their walks of life, and the challenges that many clients or many users, I like to say court users, that many of the court users face. When considering diversity and equity and inclusion, it's really important in terms of the view from the court that we put forth a process in which the court users feel as though not only they're being heard, but feel as though they are being understood. And a lot of the ways that an individual or a court user will feel that they're understood is honestly what they see. If they walk into a courtroom and they don't see anyone that looks like them, either with the attorneys or the judges or the other individuals in the courtroom, unfortunately, it can put forth a picture that would have a person feel as though they are not receiving equity or not being included in the process. And so the importance of diversity in our court system, it's really important. Individuals, when you go to these law firms, when you're coming to court, when they see someone that looks like them, they feel as though they are being heard. And so I want to make sure that in my remarks, I tell you the importance of making sure that diversity and inclusion, however you define it, is at the forefront of the law firms that you look for. When you're interning, look at the clientele that the law firm is representing, and really think about how you provide diversity, equity, and inclusion to that firm, because it's so important.
Thank you so much, Judge Bryce. Thank you so much for providing your thoughts and your advice. It's very important. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you.
And now, it is my pleasure, my distinct honor, to introduce the Honorable Troy K. Weber, Judge, who is an Associate Justice for the Appellate Division, First Department, and a co-chair of the Franklin H. Williams Judicial Commission, and a graduate of NYU Law School. Judge Weber, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I, as representative of the Williams Commission, as co-chair of the Williams Commission, is excited to be a part of this important program. The Williams Commission was established in 1991. At that time, Franklin H. Williams had been called upon by the then Chief Judge Wackler to investigate and to report on bias and racism within the court system. As you may be aware, that report concluded that there were two justice systems at work in the courts of New York State, one for whites and a very different one for minorities and for the poor. According to that report, the public perceived the court system to be racially biased, and that the courts used primarily by minorities, that would be the family, criminal, civil, and housing courts within New York City, were grossly deteriorated and inadequate. They were referred to actually as ghetto courts. The report also made reference to overtly racist comments from judges in open court across the state, discriminatory treatment of minority court users, court personnel who were frequently disrespectful and discourteous to minority court users, and as well as court officers who engaged in racist conduct with the public, as well as with their fellow court officers. As an aside, I will mention that in the spring of, I believe, 2020, our current Chief Judge, Janet DeFiore, called upon Secretary Jay Johnson to undertake a similar investigation and to also render a report. Not surprisingly, but disheartening, Secretary Johnson's report made almost identical findings. The Franklin H. Williams Commission is a permanent, independent commission within the New York State court system. We are tasked with eradicating systemic racism in the court system by taking affirmative steps to address and eliminate barriers to racial and ethnic fairness in the courts. Also, to increase racial and ethnic group representation in all levels of the court system. We do this through the examination and review of current practices, and we make recommendations to enhance racial and ethnic diversity in the court. We, in terms of the court staff, as well as the professionals within the court system, judicial and non-judicial, as well as in the legal community. The commission is dedicated to increasing diversity in the legal profession. We have partnered with various law schools and have presented programs on increasing the number of individuals of color who apply to law school. We need that pipeline. We need individuals of color to apply to law school. More importantly, we need to ensure that they succeed while in law school and that they succeed once they become attorneys. We also have a mentoring program for individuals, attorneys of color who wish to ascend to the bench and who are interested in becoming judges who will be able to, again, give the community, allow for the community to see individuals like themselves when on the bench, when they come into the courtrooms and their cases are being litigated. When I graduated from law school, when I graduated from NYU Law School, a number of the individuals, graduates, went into public interest work. I myself went into public interest work. I went to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Attorneys of color have traditionally gone into public interest or government positions, and we can certainly debate the pros and cons. However, I believe that we can all agree that there has to be that option to practice in other areas. There has to be an option to attorneys of color to actually go to law firms. According to the National Association for Law Placement, the percentage of Black associates surpassed 5% in 2020. And that was for the first time since the association began collecting data. The share of associates who are Black women increased to 3.04%, exceeding the 2009 figure of 2.93. The overall percentage of associates of color increased about a percentage point to 26.48%. So I'll tell you that again. Associates of color are now approximately 26.48%. That was driven largely by the increased representation of Asian associates. Despite modest growth in 2020, Black women and Latina women each continue to represent less than 1% of all partners in US law firms. I give you that figure again. Black women and Latina women each continue to represent less than 1% of all partners in US law firms. The percentage of Black partners overall finally surpassed 2%. Just one position was made up of women lawyers where there was an increase, and that was in the non-judicial, non-attorney positions. Representation of women lawyers in non-attorney or non-traditional track staff attorneys, meaning those individuals who are not on the partner track, that did increase. There was a slight increase from 2019. Among associates, again, the share of women was 47.45%. That's women overall, a historic high. At the partner level, women across the board increased also in 2020. The percentage of LGBTQ lawyers in 2020 was 3.31%, an increase of about 1/3. Now, I give you these stats and this data just to show that when I graduated from law school, the numbers were far less, granted. And it is encouraging that these numbers have increased. However, we have to do better. There have to be ways in which to increase the number of attorneys of color, of women, of LGBTQ individuals at law firms. And we have to kind of come up with with solutions to this problem. A couple of law firms, I know Skadden Arps, I think Weil, and a couple of the other law firms do have programs which encourage individuals of color to once they graduate from law school, to become associates at the law firms. There are a couple of programs by the bar associations as well to encourage attorneys of color to join law firms. And these are all programs that must continue, and these are all programs that we have to support. But we have to come up with other solutions. We have to come up with other ways, perhaps, that law firms look to the applicant pool. You're only going to look at Columbia or Harvard or Yale or NYU or Albany. Are you going to look to other law schools in terms of your hiring? Are you going to impose different or look at different hiring criteria? We all know, once you graduate from law school, the fact that you graduate from law school does not mean that you're going to be a great lawyer. It does not, it is one indicator, but it is not the overall indicator of how you are going to practice law. You have the fundamentals, yes. So we have to kind of think out of the box to some extent and try to figure out ways in which to increase the numbers of attorneys of color, women, LGBTQ individuals at law firms. And that's why this panel discussion today is so important, so that we can address these issues and hopefully come up with a solution or possible solutions to these issues. So again, I thank you all very much. And I look forward to hearing from the panelists and hearing their input in terms of what we can do on this very, very important subject. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Justice Weber. That was incredible. And although the data is slightly depressing, it is hopeful that some increases and gains have been made. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about how we at the Albany Law School Career and Professional Development Center help to support our students in finding these jobs, these important pathways into law firms and into other jobs, including judicial clerkships. So here at Albany Law School, every student is assigned to a career counselor, and I encourage students to meet with their counselor at least once a semester. And the reason being is that oftentimes career counselors and people in the position that I'm in have a bird's eye view of what's happening in the legal market. And we may know about opportunities and can provide students with information on important deadlines that are coming up and opportunities that you may not otherwise know where to look for. So please make an appointment with your career counselor every semester and come in and talk to us about what could be possible for you. In addition, we're happy to help and often help with application documents, including cover letters, resumes, and personal statements and statements of interest. We know it's very hard to write about personal circumstances, especially when applying for fellowships that are related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we also know how to create persuasive personal statements so that the opportunities, some of which Justice Weber mentioned, are available to you and that you put yourself in the best position possible to get them. We use Albany Law Link to advertise internships, field placements, fellowships, and opportunities, especially and expressly available to individuals from historically underrepresented communities. In addition, we send out an email every Wednesday. It's our jobs and ops email. And in that email, we highlight diversity opportunities. There are many diversity opportunities with law firms. The number has grown exponentially in the last 5 years, and we encourage you to apply for those. We also send out a diversity opportunities newsletter that promotes opportunities, including fellowships, summer associate positions, and job fairs. We have two main recruiting programs, one in February each year, and then one that happens every summer beginning in July, in or around July, that focuses primarily on opportunities for summer associate positions with law firms. If you are currently a 1L student, then you will receive emails at the end of the spring semester from our office about this summer's recruiting program, and you should plan to take advantage of it. We will host mock interview programs before the actual recruiting program that will help you to get ready for your interviews, teach you how to research firms, and be ready to answer the questions about why you're interested in a law firm career. I also want to let you know about our clerkship committee. It's a committee that's made up of alumni and faculty, and it's here to help you navigate the application process for judicial clerkships. Wonderful opportunities that we want you to take advantage of. In addition to the opportunities posted on Albany Law Link, you should take advantage of Bar Association memberships, many of which are free for students, and many offer internship and fellowship programs. One that comes to mind for our Albany Law School students is the Albany County Bar Association's Diversity Fellowship that offers paid law firm positions during the fall and spring semester and creates the opportunity for students to gain some exposure to what it's like to work for a private law firm before they graduate. Others are the Kenneth G. Standard program that's offered through the New York State Bar Association Corporate Counsel section and offers paid placements with various corporate general counsel offices. And then, of course, the Sonia and Selena Sotomayor Judicial Internship Program that offers internships with judges at the local, state, and federal levels. These are just a few, and there are many more opportunities available through local and specialty bar associations, and I encourage you to join them and become an active student member. These networks will provide you with important professional contacts that will provide you with knowledge and opportunities for your future. I also encourage you to take advantage of the Albany Law School Alumni and Mentoring Program if you don't already have a mentor. You can sign up next fall to be matched with an alumni mentor who can help to introduce you to additional professional development opportunities. And now I will turn to the panel portion of today's program. Our panel discussion today will be moderated by the Honorable Richard Rivera, the supervising judge of the Family Court in the 3rd Judicial District and acting Supreme Court Justice. Judge Rivera is also recently appointed a co-chair of the Franklin H. Williams Judicial Commission. Congratulations to you, Judge Rivera. On our panel today, Judge Rivera will be joined by Brenda T. Baddam, who is an Assistant Attorney General with the Office of the New York State Attorney General and a former Associate Attorney with Barclay Damon. Brenda is Albany Law School alumna class of 2017. Also today, we are happy to welcome Assistant Dean Jermaine Cruz. Dean Cruz joined the law school in recent months, and he is our Assistant Dean for Diversity and Inclusion, and we're very happy to have him with us. Kyle Ishman joins us who is an associate with Venable LLP. Kyle is an Albany Law School alumnus and graduated in 2020. Welcome, Kyle. And Shalini Natesan is a class of 2006 alumna and is a senior associate with the Towne law firm. And finally, Kadeem Wollaston, who is a class of 2018 alumnus and is an associate with the law firm of Wilson, Elser, Moskowitz, Edelman, and Dicker. Thank you to all of you for joining us, and I will let Judge Rivera take it away.
Thank you, Dean Fitzpatrick, for the introductions, and I truly appreciate that picture. I keep saying that's what I look like when I first took the bench, and what you see on your screen now is what I look like today. I feel like President Obama when he first became president, and then at the end when he was done, his hair looked a lot different. I want to thank the panelists for joining us, and I actually want to start my first question with Dean Cruz. So Dean Cruz, your position there at the law school, I don't believe was there when I was a student, so it's fairly new to me. So if you could explain to those who have joined us the purpose of your office and what services and resources you have in furtherance of diversity, equity, and inclusion that you would like our students to know about.
Absolutely. So the office is, as you said, relatively new. There was an individual in this position before me some years ago who was not here very long, and then there was a search that lasted for quite some time. And so I've been here a little under 3 months. My office is charged with providing general support to all students and creating an inclusive environment where all students feel seen and like they belong. On an institutional level, I'm charged with building a strategic plan for the law school around DEI and developing policies and procedures that don't exist, and that goes across the board, everything from human resources to academic affairs and student services. And also to provide training opportunities for not only our faculty and staff, but for our students. Work in conjunction with the faculty and staff at the law school to deal with any bias-related incidents that we have, although since I've been here, we haven't had any major ones, and I'm knocking on wood. But again, like the primary goal is making sure that our students are feeling seen and are being provided with the opportunities that they need to be successful law students and go out into the world and productive, competent, skillful lawyers, but also culturally proficient lawyers that are able to work in a variety of practice areas and a variety of people.
Thank you, Dean Cruz.
Sure.
So to our panelists, I want to ask you what made you decide to begin your career in a firm? And for those of you that didn't, because I know at least Ms. Baddam did not, for those of you that did not start at a firm, what made you decide to go into private practice? And perhaps in your case, Ms. Baddam, why you went back to work for the state? So perhaps we can start with Ms. Natesan, and if you could just explain why you went to private practice.
Sure. So actually out of law school, I started at Ernst & Young in Boston, doing tax law in a public accounting firm. So that was, that was a good experience. And then I got work experience at a firm with hundreds of thousands of employees all over the world. And then from there, I actually, just as a change, and I think I had had enough of tax law, I went on to matrimonial and family law, which is totally different. And I'm glad I did it because it exposed me to some work that I wouldn't have otherwise done. And also I know now I don't think I'm cut out for that either. So I tried it because that was, I wanted to have a variety of experiences and find my best fit. And I think had I stayed at Ernst & Young, it would have been an interesting experience, but I wouldn't have been exposed to all these different types of legal issues being in such a niche area. So for me, private practice was good because it just, it allows me to serve clients, especially at the place I'm at now at Towne Law. It allows me to serve clients in a variety of legal needs.
Mr. Wollaston, what about you?
Well, my career, I started at clerking at the court. So my first job was actually working in the courts, but directly after I went into private practice. But if I had to answer the question on why I went to private practice, it was more of a goal of mine. I I took my experience from during law school and did public sector work. And I was able to also get experiences working in private practice. And in my opinion, I thought doing private practice work, it was more fulfilling for me, at least. So I felt like I liked working with companies. I like seeing the inside of business. I'm interested in that aspect of the legal world. And in my opinion, I thought the way to gather that experience the most was doing private practice. So that's why I went directly into private practice.
Ms. Baddam.
Thank you. I actually started my career in public service as an assistant DA with Albany County, and I loved it. I thought it was the best job in the world. But truthfully speaking, as a public servant, you're not getting paid that well. And you are struggling, especially your first year with the loans. And it's hard, right? So I transitioned to a law firm where I knew diversity was important. And coincidentally, Shali, Kadeem, and I all worked for the same law firm where diversity was actually a cornerstone of the law firm. I transitioned back to public service because I valued family time. Billable hours is no joke. And I'm grateful for the experience that I did have in private practice. I learned a lot. I made great friends. But I definitely think what Shali said is true. You have to know what is true to you and what you want in your future.
So before I turn to Mr. Isham, what is the firm that the three of you worked at? I don't think you mentioned it.
It's Barclay, Damon, in Albany.
Thank you. So, Mr. Isham, if you want to answer the question, please.
Sure. So I've been at Venable for a little over a year now. And similar to Kadeem, for me, going into private practice had a lot to do with the type of law. I was interested, and I'm still interested, in commercial litigation. That's the practice group that I'm in. So civil litigation, business disputes, things of that nature. And the law firm environment is just, I guess, was sort of pitched in law school as well as being the more traditional route to get that experience. And so that's why I took that route. But I also agree with Brenda. After about a year in private practice, I still love it. I still plan to keep my career in private practice, but yes, the billable hour is not a joke. So it's definitely, it teaches you a lot of time management and a lot of dedication. And, you know, I've learned a lot, but yeah, for me, it was mostly the practice area of law that I wanted to start my career and get experience in.
So my next question is for all the panelists, but I'll start with you because I believe that you did an internship at the firm you're at or at a firm. So if you can give the participants an idea of how you got that internship and whether or not you felt it was beneficial to where you are now.
Sure. So my second summer of law school, I did the OCR program. The particular firm that I'm at wasn't listed in that program at the time. I'm not sure if they are now. So it wasn't quite the traditional pipeline. I actually went to Dean Fitzpatrick, who provided me with a list of alumni that we had at different, larger law firms. At the time, I was looking mostly in New York City, was the area I wanted to be in. So I pretty much just took contact information and sent out emails with writing sample, cover letter, my transcript and resume, just introducing myself and basically saying, I'm interested in interviewing for your firm. And that's actually what led to where I'm at now. I did have more traditional interviews that were through sort of the recruiting process and had other offers. I just happened to choose Venable at the time. So I pretty much followed the traditional process, doing first round interviews right in the Career Center, and then going to New York to do callbacks and that sort of thing. But the Career Center was great in helping me navigate that space, preparing my documents, all that stuff. So that's pretty much how I ended up where I am now.
What about the rest of our panelists?
I thought way back when I went to school, so this is almost 20 years ago now, I had an externship at the Department of State, the Department of Tax with the state. And then I also did a clinic, also the tax clinic. So for me, that solidified how much I knew I wanted to be in tax, at least for the beginning of my career. And I thought the Career Center was so helpful in helping me fix my resume and all that. So I also found my job at Ernst & Young through the Career Center. So that's how I got there. And when I left Ernst & Young and came back to Albany, just same thing, Googling, searching for companies that have practice in areas that I wanted to do, and just sent out resumes, made phone calls, and using connections too, because Albany isn't a big place. So you're sure to know somebody who knows someone. And I've also found lately LinkedIn has been huge in making connections. So that's a good resource too.
Anyone else?
Well, for me, I utilize the Career Center frequently in law school as well. Dean Fitzpatrick probably speak about the amount of conversations that I've had with her numerous times, just trying to figure out what job opportunities were out there, because I was so conscious about the school loans and after graduation being able to pay them. So my position, I actually learned about it through an email that was circulated throughout the law school. About the third department does a common post-graduation position. And I actually applied and received it, and it filled that position. But my opportunities in law firm was through networking. And that's also utilizing the law school. There's so many events and so many practitioners that come throughout the school, and especially in the Albany area. They're so personable, and they're really there to help you navigate the legal field and help you grow in the legal world. So, especially in Albany, it's so small. So just utilizing your network and being open to meet everyone else and being personable. Because if people like you, you'd be surprised that you shake one hand and someone else will say, I heard about you from somebody you met one time, and it goes a long way.
So let me ask you this, because Mr. Isham mentioned the recruitment process. So if any of our panelists want to share your thoughts and your perspectives on the recruitment process, both at the law school or otherwise.
I guess I can start off. So to my knowledge, it's pretty standard across law schools as far as the recruiting process goes. You submit your materials and you sort of select firms, or I know at other schools they bid for certain firms, but largely the same process. And you get an initial screener interview, which is usually at the Career Center. In my experience, what was huge with that was interviewing beforehand, so practice interviews. And the Career Center was great with that. I can remember at least a couple interviews that I did in the Career Center, and with Dean Fitzpatrick. She sort of played the role of a law firm partner a couple times, and to sort of prep me. And I did that with a few different people. I probably went through 5 or 6 practice interviews before actually interviewing. And it was extremely helpful, because the more times you do it, the more comfortable you are. The more comfortable you are, the more you're able to sort of sell yourself, but also just have a natural conversation with the interviewers. And that's really what they're looking for. Just someone that they can sit down and have a conversation with, and pretty much answer the question of, you know, if I had to deal with this person until 1, 2 in the morning on a case, you know, is it somebody that I could feel comfortable sitting and working with? And yeah, so I would say practicing is huge, and definitely doing a lot of interviews. I interviewed at firms that at the time I didn't even have an interest in, just to get the experience, right? Just to have more interviews, have more sit downs with people, so that when I did get in front of, you know, the partners or the senior associates that were interviewing me at the firms that I really wanted to be at, I felt more comfortable because, hey, I've done this, you know, 10, 15 times already. So that was huge.
So I'll add to Kyle's statements. I remember interviewing in law school for firms, even though I knew I wanted to be in public service. And I would do my research beforehand. You'd be surprised how many of our of the people that we met had like YouTube videos up of them playing drums or them with their kids at a park. And I would bring that up during the interviews, just because it was a way to humanize them, but also to let them know, I know you, I've done my research. You can trust me to do research at this job, right? So definitely doing your research. Those practice mock interviews are great. Fitzpatrick is so good. But also something that Kadeem said before, I think is imperative. Your connections are so important. And without those connections, it would be harder for you to get in, especially in Albany and how close Albany is. And you'd be surprised how just one meeting with someone can spark interest in other areas that you had never known before. For example, Shali and Kadeem, we all work together, but I know I could call them at any moment for anything. And we weren't even in the same area of the law firm, but we knew each other and would probably be more apt to help others along the way. So I think connections, preparing yourself, and then doing as much as you can to be prepared for that interview.
So let me ask you this, and for those who didn't answer that question, you can still answer it, but along the lines of what you've been speaking of, you know, not everyone is outgoing. We have a lot of students and a lot of adult attorneys who are shy and reserved. So what advice would you give for anyone out there like that who really should take advantage of the networking that you've brought up, and if you could share that, or maybe you were that way, and if you could share any advice you give, that would be great.
Yeah, I can say I'm not really big into, or I wasn't at one point, like loving going to these networking events. It was like more like a chore. I have to say it's like almost like a muscle that you exercise. Like you exercise learning to talk to a stranger and making a 5-minute conversation with someone becomes easier as you do it. So I think there's all sorts of like networking events. I just went to one on Monday. The Albany Business Review had a mentoring event, phenomenal, by the way. But like as a mentee, I go and speak to a mentor, never met them, you know, just know a brief bio of them, but to have to make conversation with them for 5-10 minutes, it's a skill you should really develop. And it's not easy in the beginning. It's awkward, of course, but I think it's something that you should practice. Just go to different events. I'm sure, you know, Chamber of Commerce events. There's all kinds of things at towns, law schools, even the law school, I'm sure puts on lots of those events. And I think it's just practice.
Good.
I just want to second what Shali said. I think you should definitely start with the law school. That is the best time to start navigating, just working on your networking skills, because when you reach after graduation and you're seen as a practitioner, I think the networking, they expect more substance out of your conversations, and the conversations tends to be, they're going to expect that you are familiar with networking and having these conversations. But as a law student, You can walk up to these experienced attorneys and they're more open to, you know, extend the conversation, ask you questions, really intrigued about what you want to do. But when you get into practice, there's more questions about what do you do? You have to be able to explain everything. There's more detailed conversations when you're already in the field. So the earlier you start, the better. So if I was a shy student, I would start earlier now and use this as the role to get there. So when I'm done with law school, I have so much experience under my belt.
If I could just add on to that. So I'm an extrovert, but I'm an introverted extrovert. So I would push myself, right? I set reminders in my phone every month to email certain people. So for example, I have Joanne every year in July 4th, I email Joanne to say, happy 4th of July. I hope you're doing well, right? I set reminders for myself because you have to be, one, consistent, but two, for people that you want in your life to be mentors or just in your life to be like a guidepost, you want them to know that you're invested. So I would write down a particular fact about them, something that happened, and then follow up on that fact. So I heard you had a grandchild. How's your grandchild? And then every 2-3 months, follow up, how's the grandchild doing? And that surprisingly has led to a lot of connections, but also to just opportunities. That's how I was able to get my job at the DA's office and actually here as well.
If I could add, I think students should think about networking as an opportunity to sort of find your voice. In culinary school, they ask you to figure out like what your flavor profile is. So this is like your opportunity to figure out what your flavor profile is, right? Like when you are going into a conversation, what is it that you want that stranger to know about you? And it is most definitely a skill. And also when you are thinking about like how you're going to participate in the court system and when you are in front of the judge, like that's also a skill that requires a lot of practice, particularly if you're an introvert. People don't believe this of me, but I do not like large groups and I do not like talking in front of people. And I literally had a ritual every time I was like, literally would go to the bathroom. I was like a boxer in front of the mirror. Like, you can do this, you're all right, you know this, you know what you're doing. I had to talk myself into it. But once I got into that frame of mind, like you couldn't get me out of it. So you just have to figure out what it is that gets you to that point. I would advise you to start with folks that you know. So think about all of the conversations that you have with your family members and your friends when they don't really want to hear about your law school experience and they're tired of hearing it. Those are the things that you take onto the, you take onto the next level and you take with you when you're going to these networking events. So talk about those things with people that are really interested in it, right?
So what about, and maybe Dean, you can give your perspective on this. What about as a person of color, right? Because you may wind up in a situation where you're one of few or maybe the only person and you're going there to network. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm always conscious of that. And I've been in many of those situations. So any tips, any recommendations on whether or not you should even think about it, what you should do to get past that thought? How do you break the ice? Any of those questions. And if everything you've already said applies, then by all means, just let us know.
Well, I think if you have the opportunity to research who you're talking to a little bit, sometimes that's helpful so that you can understand who you're talking to. The reality is that we do have to work a little bit harder and a little bit smarter, right? And so you need to be prepared as much as you possibly can. And I think that there is a delicate balance between being assertive and aggressive, and you need to find that because you never want to be seen as aggressive, but you also want them to know that you know what you're talking about. And a lot of that comes with practice and really just in general conversation a lot of times. Like if you put yourselves in situations where you're able to have very light debates with people, it allows you to develop the skills that you need to sort of create that balance. I mean, I'm not an expert on assertiveness versus aggressiveness, but I think if you create small opportunities like that for yourself, you start to develop sort of the middle ground that you need to be in a situation and have them understand, like, I definitely know what I'm talking about, and I have the same education that you do. without without being intimidating, right? Because part of it is we are seen as individuals, we are seen as intimidating, and so you have to sort of remove that edge from the conversation.
Anyone else want to address that? Feel free.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Brenda. Dean Cruz hit the nail on the head. I start off my interviews, hola, ¿cómo estás? And I, off the bat, let people know, yes, there is a difference here. And that difference should be celebrated. And if this is the job for me, you will celebrate my difference. And not in an assertive, just like that, but in a way that it's blatantly clear that I am going to still be my most authentic self in this job, because I do not want to be anything other than that.
I also think, to quote a book I read once by an Indian author who said, why not me? Like, it's another thing to practice. Yep, there's differences here, but exactly like Dean Cruz said, I have the same education as you. I know what I'm talking about. Why not me? And another thing, I'm usually much shorter than everyone I'm around. Like, I just am a small person. So I feel like I stand up straight and this is my stature, and why not me? That's all. It's like practice it in my head a little bit.
Those are all great tips. I'm not that tall either. So I'm not going to stand up. But it's important, it sounds like you're all agreeing it's important that you know who you are and that you go there with the confidence and knowledge that you belong there. And then nobody can tell you otherwise, even if they actually say it. You're there because you belong there, you have a place there, and be proud. So I'm glad to hear the comments that you've made. So now let me ask you, how many of you, because Dean Fitzpatrick mentioned the mentoring program at the law school, and whether or not you participated through a mentoring program at the law school, how many of you have a mentor or utilize a mentor? How important do you think that is? And I believe, Ms. Baddam, you mentioned that and you talked about that. So maybe you can start with that.
Yeah, so I strongly believe in the mentorship program in the law school. I was a mentee and now I'm a mentor. But I will say, if you are in a law firm, something that you should be looking forward to is a sponsorship. So there's a very big difference between mentorship and sponsorship. Mentorship is someone who takes an interest in your career, your advancement. Sponsorship, they are intimately woven into your success. So while at Barclay Damon, my sponsor was the managing partner now, Connie Cahill. And we would have weekly chats and we would talk about everything from her grandkids to the chair that she was using to work to billable hours. And it was an open conversation without judgment. If you are looking into a law firm, you identify first someone who you want to emulate, and then see if they're willing to take an interest in you more than just how are you doing today, right? I think that changed my career trajectory. I think that even though I ultimately did not stay with the firm, we were able to build a friendship that even to this day, we still speak. And it helps you be open to the issues that you are having in the law firm, right? We all talked about billable hours. Why not talk about billable hours with someone who has done it for years and can help you?
Mentorship, if I could just quick comment, I think that it's one of the most important aspects of what we do. I know that I wouldn't be where I am without mentors. I will say my mentors were a little bit non-traditional. Not that, there wasn't a ton of opportunity for more conventional mentorship and mentorship programs that are at the law school, which I think everybody should participate in. I was a little bit lucky and I sort of stumbled upon some mentors that I, again, still have to this day. actually the summer right before I started law school, I met an attorney by the name of Mishka Woodley. And she sort of, I think she was a mentor, but in the way that Brenda said, and I would say any good mentor would be more of a sponsor, right? Because really invested in me, invested in my success in so many ways. And then she introduced me, and sort of where it dovetails into the networking is that was someone who explained to me the importance of networking. Mishka is very well connected, and I was fortunate enough to sort of be under her wing, and she would take me to networking events, even as a 1L, and start introducing me to people. And I think that that's a huge part of mentorship as well. And again, it's probably the most influential aspect of getting me through law school successfully, and then getting me, to where I am now. And it also helped me with the networking, which is tough. I'm also not a very extroverted person by nature. It is a practice, right? I was introduced at the ground floor. I sort of had Mishka to navigate those spaces with me, and show me some do's and don'ts, and how to have those, quick but effective conversations with people. And she introduced me to another mentor that I still have now, Judge May D'Agostino, who I just talked to today before this call. And so mentorship is definitely huge. I also want to echo what Brenda said about making it a point to keep in contact, because it does get tough, especially when you think you're busy in law school. Once you start practice and life happens, it gets difficult. So you have to be very intentional about reaching out, but it pays dividends, right? Keeping in contact with people who have invested in you, and then it will carry you through your career. And I know I'm very early in it saying that, but it really has already, and it's opened up opportunities, so many opportunities for me.
By the way, didn't we meet through Mishka? I know that she's introduced me to a lot of people. So.
Yes, she did. At an event at the law school that she encouraged me to go to, on a day that I had been studying a little bit late and didn't feel like going, but she said, "Hey, there are people here that you need to meet, and that this will be good for you." So yes, we did.
So for those of you who are out there and are introverted and shy, I was going to suggest that tip to go with someone else who maybe can help ease the way until you start getting used to those conversations. And Mishka's good for that. But any of the panelists, I'm sure, would also be open to the same thing. So let me ask about the culture at the firms where you all work or practice. If you can share the culture there, were there dress codes, were there any do's and don'ts that you feel you want them to know if they should work at a firm?
I guess I'll start. Well, majority of with my current firm, I've only been with them for 2 months, so I'm still learning the culture. But I can tell from once you've done it once in the private practice, you have an idea of how the politics works in private practice. Everybody's personality is different. Who you work with who you work with is going to be dependent upon your experience in private practice. Because in Barclay, Damon in particular, we worked in the Albany office. The experience of associates in the Albany office was completely different from associates in the Syracuse office and the Buffalo office, and moving on. So what I've learned and what I took from my experience from Barclay, Damon, I actually know that you have to play it safe and tread lightly when you first start, and ask associates, but you need to make sure that you build a relationship with one of the associates that's willing to tell you the ins and outs. They'll tell you this partner is not going to respond to your email right away. Don't take it offensive. That's just how they work. They're going to send you work last minute. They're not going to check on the due dates for certain things. So you have to make sure you let them know when some things are due. So understanding those little nuances is going to make you successful in your firm. And lastly, I would always tell someone navigating a law firm, try to find a mentor in the law firm, preferably someone that is already established, because they'll tell you how to move up the ladder. So those are the things I've been doing. I'm also doing it. Luckily, networking, I have a very good relationship with the regional managing partner of this law firm. So of this office, so I'm on to a good start. I can say that.
Anyone else?
I remember when I started at Barclay, Kadeem and our offices were right next to each other. And I remember going into Kadeem's office and saying, have you heard from this person today? Because I have not. What is happening? So cultures depend on the firm and also the firm partners. You can have great partners, but just not responsive or communicate the same way that you do, right? And so being very clear and very open when you first get an assignment about timeline, how you want to communicate and how often you want to communicate is very important. But also, like Kadeem said, having someone that you can run over to their office and say, hey, is this person alive? Like, what are we doing here? That also helped as well.
I've worked at really, really big firms and really small firms. And I think I've noticed in the big firms, it's more formal, necessarily so because they have to manage so many people, that there are like levels to communication, and there's more of a distinction between the levels of associates, mid-level, high-level partners. And so I think it's also good to get an experience at different types of firms to see, this is a good fit for me. This is not such a good fit for me. The firm I'm at now, I would say, is smallish, and it's more, I wouldn't say casual, but I'm not actually sure what the word is for the opposite of that big firm formal type of culture, which I think we experienced more at Barclay, Damon. So it also depends. I mean, it's always such a good thing though, to be able to have friends and mentors at the place, like everyone said, just to reiterate, just whatever the culture is, to be able to have someone there that you can really talk to about anything and know it's, a safe space for you.
I would also add that once you sort of figure out what the culture is and where you fit in there, trying to figure out, so nothing's forever, right? So that job may not be your forever job, but figuring out what you're going to get out of your experience there. My first law firm, I worked at a really small law firm in DC, but it was a highly resourced firm. And the managing partner, the owner, in general, was just a terrible human being. But he traipsed me around Washington, D.C. like no other, right? Until I realized what he was doing, right? Like I was his guy. And once I realized that, I created opportunities to separate myself from him in those meetings so that people would get to know me, right? Like not know me in conjunction with him. And it also forced me to build my own professional reputation, because he was known as a very contentious attorney. And I would walk into meetings sometimes, and the automatic response, because I worked for him, was that this was going to be a terrible meeting. And so I learned how to be sort of a kind lawyer really quickly, because I had to. And so figuring out what you're going to get out of a particular experience is really important, so that you can work on that. And when you start doing that, sort of some of the other stuff takes a back seat, to what it is that you're trying to get out of the experience.
So what about impressions? I personally believe that our first impressions are important, and it's hard to overcome a negative one, but a lot easier to, support and reinforce a good one. So how do you make a first good impression at a firm if you get a job at one? Any thoughts on that? And what about, if you want to include that, or maybe answer this one instead, how important do you think your ability to write is, and what suggestion would you give? I mean, I know as a judge, I get a lot of written material, and I'm going to leave it at that. But So if you could share with our participants any thoughts on that.
Well, from my perspective, I think private practice, generally, you're going to do a lot of writing. And that includes, a lot of memorandums, a lot of in-depth research. So if you are in law school and it's something that you should try to hone into, the better you're able to equip with the skills to write a memorandum quickly, as well as get the substance, it's going to be better. And to make the right first impression, I think you should take your time on your first assignment. Your first writing assignment can be dependent on if that partner even sends work to you. It can lower your workload. Because one of the things that's not discussed much, at least when I was thinking of private practice, is that you have to reach billable hours, but in order to reach it, you have to receive the work. And in order to receive the work, you have to give the work quality that these partners expect. So I would say take your time, really think thoroughly before you turn in your first assignment, because a good work product could have you have a full plate of work. You might have too much work because you did such a great job. And say, I received work from this associate and he did such a great job. And they'll say, oh, maybe I should send him work as well. So word of mouth can pass good or bad. So that's my advice, at least.
And different partners have different styles, right? So certain partners like more expressive writing, and certain partners like very matter-of-fact writing, and it all depends on your audience and who you're going to give it to. So using those friendships and mentorships that you've made along the way to figure out how your writing should be for this specific partner will definitely save you a lot of editing in the future.
Yeah, I would say, especially in private practice, at least in my experience at my firm, work product speaks over all. I mean, that's not to say that, generally communicating well and having relationships is not important. It definitely is, but exactly what Kadeem said is pretty much how it works. That first assignment, I would say, even more than speaking with someone, is crucial, because really what it is thinking in the mindset of this is going to a partner, and then this partner is submitting this to a client, right? And your job is really just to make the person above you, to make their job easier, right? And the less work they have to do, correcting or redoing, the better that first impression is, really. And so definitely, I would say attention to detail, and especially on the first assignment, especially as a junior associate, attention to detail and taking your time and maybe spending some extra time proofreading, extra time drafting or redrafting will pay off in the long run, rather than trying to rush something out the door. You learn to be able to do things on a quicker timeline. That comes with time and practice. But really, yes, that first assignment, especially if it's a larger memorandum or a large piece of research that a partner needs, or a senior level associate, that's going to go a long way, because when they get that and they look at it and they say, wow, I can use this. This is exactly what I asked for. And, I can either submit this to the client or to the court. That's going to go a long way, because then again, when they have a decision to make, oh, what associates do I need, or who am I going to go to for this project? I remember so-and-so submitted that memo, and it was really clean, and I really need this done, so I'm going to go back to that person. So that also brings up one other thought that I have, is that ask a lot of questions sooner rather than later. That's really important. Once you work with someone for a period of time, like Brenda said, like you'll learn their style. Everybody does have different styles and what they want. I've worked with different people at the firm where it was the right way with one partner, but not the right way with another partner. And that's within the exact same practice group on similar matters. So that's also important. And that's where asking questions early comes from. You know, what's the timeline? What do you have in mind for the final, you know, deliverable? How would you like this organized? All those questions up front, rather than after, you know, corrections need to be made. Because then when you get that information, you take your time and you submit something that really adds value and makes their job easier. That's when you'll start getting repeat work, you know, and people talk. I mean, I've had partners that I have good relationships with that, you know, have made me privy to the fact that there are meetings between partners and senior level associates and counsel, and you know, you want your name thrown around in a good way. And once it is up front, it will take you, you know, it will carry you, so to speak.
One thing I just want to add to that. Oh, sorry, Dean, you go ahead.
No, go ahead. You can go ahead.
Oh, so sometimes you go into a law firm with an idea like, I'm a litigation attorney, or I do this, I do estate planning. And I've been practicing for 16 years now, and I still sometimes will get an assignment where it's something I've never done. Like recently, the partner asked, can you just handle this collections matter? I've never touched before, but I think it's good to be eager to learn new things, because you never know, like you touch something and it's like, oh, wow, I actually really like that. Or I have a knack for this. I really want to try it again. Or maybe even the opposite, where it's like, I know I never want to do litigation work. The thought of actually appearing makes me nauseous. So it's like, I know I don't want to do that. So, but someone was on maternity leave, and partner said, can you just handle this quick appearance? And like, I think people are more eager to give you work when you're not saying, oh, yes, I mean, if I have to, and more like, oh yeah, why not? Why not me? I can do it. Let's try this. So I think be eager about new work too.
I was just going to ask Judge Rivera, I don't know if you are taking questions, but one of our students has had her hand up for quite some time.
We were gonna start at about 1:30, but we can
Okay.
start.
No, we can start at 1:30. I just didn't know.
Well, I was gonna say it's only 3 minutes away. So we can certainly start there, but I do want to say this, that the impressions that you leave are important, because as you heard the panelists mention, it can lead to more work, more positive work. It can lead to improvement, upward mobility within the firm that you're working for, or maybe even lateral moves or outside of that firm. So I always say it's important to keep in mind the impression that you're leaving. And as a person of color, I think that's even more so important, because let's face it, that's what most people see for most of us when we walk in the door. Right? That's the first thing they see. And I have nothing against that. I say I'm beautiful and brown and I love it. And so I don't really care that you see my color when I walk in the door. But it's important for me to make sure that I leave a lasting and positive impression, so that when I'm gone, you remember me for the good stuff. And so if anyone else wants to share on that thought, I thought, Dean Cruz, you wanted to say something on that thought, but you didn't, so that's okay. No pressure. So I know that we were, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I will comment if you like. I think impressions are important, right? But I think that we also have to, I made decisions in my life based on what I was willing to give up, right? In terms of my identity and my forward appearance. And so, I mean, you all can't see it here, but I wear earrings, my nose is pierced, I have tattoos, and I made those decisions, and I made career decisions based on how much of how important this was to me, right? And it's important to me for a number of different reasons that I won't go into now. And so you have to decide how much you're willing to give up sometimes, and how important it is to you to keep certain things that are dear to you, and find the opportunities that allow you to be the person that you want to present to me. And I think that professionalism and appearance is very important. I think that that impressions are very important, but I think that there are also opportunities for you to build those impressions outside of your appearance sometimes. And so that, but again, there's a balance, right? And so you make decisions based on what makes you comfortable and how you want to, sort of how you want to exist in the world and what's important to you.
Thank you, Dean Cruz.
Private law firm route was probably not going to be for me very long.
So we can open up the floor to questions. Dean Fitzpatrick, I don't know if you see who might have.
I do. So Isabella has had her hand raised. Isabella, would you like to unmute and ask your question of the panel?
Absolutely. First, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you all for your time and your advice. I think this event is very important and impactful, especially for the diverse community. I myself have been struggling with summer internships and thinking, oh no, I've been wanting to go into public interest my whole life, but now loans are a thing. Like, what do I do? So I think it's very informative to listen to all of your perspectives because it gives me a more realistic feel of what I should be considering. But at the same time, I do have like this conflict that I wanted to share just to see if anybody has feedback. But I'm kind of the opposite of Kadeem, where he said, you know, business motivates him and he loves having clients that are companies. I myself did not perform as well, for example, like in contracts as I did in civil procedure. So I'm a lot more motivated by you know, defending, maybe trying to close a justice gap or defending the most vulnerable. And that comes from my experience living in Latin America as well. And I know that that's just a part of who I am. So I am not daunted by, you know, my capacity to be in a law firm. I'm not daunted by my capacity to do the hard work, but I am daunted by, you know, doing the hard work for a person or a partner at all hours of day. Is that truly going to motivate me to do the hard work like I will be if it's for somebody that actually like resonates with what I think to be my purpose? So it's hard to think of these considerations. And even the other day, I was listening to the Supreme Court considerations, and they were saying how like all of them had complete public interest, you know, lifetime. So it's like, well, how in advance am I supposed to be thinking? Like, I don't know if that's something I want, but I'd like the option. But I guess it's just really hard to struggle with these things and to start thinking of the finances. So how much should I really be concerned about the financial plan and put aside my passion for that?
Well, for me, I do like the justice work and working with persons as well, but I know I will take that work home because it was so personal to me. And that's one thing with me. I want to be able to leave work and not think about it. Working with a company, to me, they have the money. They're fine. They'll be okay. They lost some money. It's a dispute. But thinking about finance is going to be based on the person. I don't know. No one really knows an individual's financial circumstances. For me, personally, I'm a first generation law student, first ever to go to law school, first generation college graduate. So finances were very important to me, specifically because I don't come from a certain family that I'm able to say, okay, if I take this public service work and I put the time in, maybe not up front, I'm not gonna make money, but down the line, I'll be okay. And I have some support in the meantime. I knew that I had to go out there and make it on my own for the most part. I'm being the example for my younger siblings and my younger cousins, and I am actually an asset or a helpful person in the family to help other people. So because I had that on my back, it was different for me. So you have to basically think about your circumstances and then be honest with yourself. Is finances going to be important? Because everybody wants to be in their passion, but at the end of the day, the real world doesn't pay. Passion doesn't pay all the time, you know, and that's just the unfortunate truth. You can also do pro bono work in a law firm, so it's still, you still have the option to do that work. If you want to add it to your plate, trust me, they'll take it.
So to add on to Kadeem, while I was at Barclay Damon, it was right after the George Floyd murder. And I remember thinking this was something that I wanted to work on, and this was something that I wanted the firm to support me on. And so we worked together to provide CLEs for protesters about their protester rights. And it was not related to any work from businesses. I was in the healthcare practice area, nothing to do with healthcare, but this was something that, one, I was passionate about, and as a member of this firm, you should also be passionate about. And so it allowed me to exercise my passionate, to do something good for the community, but also do my work, right? The other thing I'll say is there are some government jobs that pay just the same, if not better, than law firms. They're far and few between, but they exist. And the only way to get them is to really build that connection and be on the lookout, because they don't come often, but when they do, you jump on them. But with a law firm, I resonate with you, because I had that same feeling, like I'm selling out, right? That's how I felt. I didn't feel that when I was in the law firm, because I was able to do what I believed was right, even while doing work in the law firm.
You know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with thinking about meeting your financial needs, because you're going to have loans that need to be repaid. So you should never feel like, okay, I feel bad that I'm taking this job. But you can see it as your starting point, as a way to address your finances and getting to a place where you can do the public interest work. I mean, I think Ms. Baddam had a wonderful idea there, where she brought into the job that she did have something that tied her to her passion. And you can look for those opportunities within any office that you work for. And to the extent that they're amenable to it, allow that to serve as your tap into that part of you until you can get a job that you can afford to take doing public interest. I first started with a solo practitioner, and unfortunately, because he was a solo practitioner, he couldn't offer me any benefits outside of my salary. And so I did have to transition out of that, but I went to work there because it was criminal defense, which was my passion. He was Puerto Rican like I am. We were both bilingual, and I saw that as a potential bilingual law firm, 2 Puerto Ricans in the Capital District. It just didn't work out the way I envisioned it in my mind. But you know, you have to consider your financial needs, because one hospital visit and I would have been poor for the rest of my life because I just couldn't afford to pay for it.
If I could jump in really quick. I will say as well that I completely agree with what everyone has said, and especially agree also with Kadeem, coming from, you know, similar circumstances. You know, I had certain, I don't come from a lot of wealth, so you know that was in the back of my mind too. And you know, when certain opportunities presented themselves, to jump on that. But I will also say that one thing, at least from my perspective, that I've seen in the legal profession that is a little bit unique is that you know, the law is a lot like, you know, 50 flavors of soda. Like it's expected that when you're young, you're going to sort of try a lot of different flavors, right? To sort of, and it actually makes you more valuable, I think, at least from my perspective, later on in your career, and looking at, you know, attorneys that I look up to that are more senior, and looking at, you know, their resumes and their experiences, is you'd be surprised how many people spent a year or two here, a year or two there, at different firms doing different practice areas, maybe a little bit, you know, go from private practice to the public sector and back. And so one thing I will say, and that's not to say that, you know, if you go somewhere and you love it, don't stay. But it's just that, at least from my perspective and what we do, that opportunity is there. And I will say that private practice, and this is not a private practice plug per se, but I will say that, you know, at certain firms, it does open up a lot of doors later on in your career. And so, you know, you may have a passion to be a prosecutor or to work in, you know, or defense work or wherever it is in you know, in the public sector. And maybe, you know, if you do have, you know, financial concerns, you have the opportunity that presents itself to go to, you know, a private practice firm or a larger firm, and you do it for a year or two to sort of get that financial base. And then you can go and pursue those opportunities. And in my experience, you know, having that on your resume will open doors, even in the public sector. It will definitely open doors. And then, you know, going forward in your career, even with dealing with, you know, less entity clients, more individuals, even having that is a confidence boost when you're trying to get clients and when you're trying to further your career later on. It might not be where you want to end up, you know, you might use it as a means to an end, right? Get the experience, get, you know, the pay, which certainly isn't bad, especially, you know, in how expensive things are now and with loans and just trying to start off. It can definitely be an asset that's not necessarily like I'm trapped in this, you know, private practice bubble. It can be something that you use as a stepping stone to get where you want to be in your career. And, you know, you never know, you might actually like it. So, and if you don't, you sort of take with you the lessons that you learn, and then the work ethic and the training, and then you go take that to a different area of the law, a different flavor, if you will, that you're more passionate about.
So Dean Fitzpatrick, I know that we're running short on time. I'll turn it over to you if there's time for another question, certainly, but if not, I'll turn it over to you either way.
Thank you very much, Judge Rivera, and thank you to all of our panelists today. This was an incredibly informative panel, and I'm sure our students learned a great deal. So I don't see any other questions in the chat, and so I will end the program by saying thank you to all of you. Thank you to our speakers, Judge Rice, Associate Justice Weber, of course, Judge Rivera for moderating the panel, and our panelists, Brenda Baddam, Dean Cruz, Kyle Ishman, Shalini Natesan, and Kadeem Wollaston. Thank you very much. Thank you also to our student affinity groups who came out for this program and supported the development of the program enthusiastically. I want to thank Apalsa, Balsa, and Lalsa. And special thanks to our alum, Mary and Krissa, who did a whole bunch of background work for this. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a very special shout out to Executive Director Mary Lynn Nicholas Brewster and Senior Counsel Allison Clark, who are just amazing partners to work with. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time and your advice.
And I will say before we end the program, I am positive that our alumni would be happy to talk to any of you offline if you care to reach out.